Okay. Hi, everybody. I am really, really excited to be here as always. I love when SCA does learning days. I love learning from it myself, and I also love participating in it. I'm really, really excited. So with that, I've been living in Israel. I live in Jerusalem now on Rehov Aza, which is the same street that Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu lives on. So there's a lot action-packed. They have demonstrations every Saturday night. So last night, my street was very loud. And then on one side of the house, I hear people demonstrating. On the other side, I hear people singing selichot. So it's really fun living in Israel. And when I lived here, so now I'm here for 4 years and a little bit. When I was living here for 3 years, I made a list of all the reasons why I love living in Israel. And by the time I was done, I had about 40 reasons on the list. And then I looked at my number one because I wanted to see what did I list as my number one reason why I'm living here. And I surprised myself with the reason because I thought I love Tanach, I love God. I thought it would have a religious reason that was my number one. And in fact, the first thing I listed when I thought about why I love living in Israel was because it was beautiful. And on just the human level, Israel is a beautiful, beautiful place. And the reason why I'm opening with that is because today's class has a lot to do with the beauty of Israel and how the beauty of Israel really helps us connect to Rosh HaShana and live in a constant state of Zikaron. I'm going to share my screen with you and show you what I mean. Okay, so my number one reason why I love living here is because Israel is beautiful. And when I don't have a car, and when I need to get around here, either I walk, I take bus, or if someone else has a car, then I'm the passenger. And because I'm usually the passenger, not the one driving, it gives me a lot of opportunity to look out the window and notice the beautiful sceneries of Israel. And the view you're looking at right now, there's a highway that connects Jerusalem to Tel Aviv that people that live here are familiar with. It's called Highway 1. Fun fact, Highway 1 connects both of the cities. And when you're driving on Highway 1, if you look to your right, and every time I'm in the car and I see this view, I get so excited. And if I'm next to people that I know, and I'm not on the bus by myself, guys, look out the window, look. And you could see it for more than a second. You want them to look at, other than you see the trees and the beautiful town, which we're going to talk about in a minute what it is. One of the things that I love looking at is this. What is that? We're going to zoom in, and this is what we're going to focus on today. This is known as Nabi Shemuel or Kever Shemuel HaNavi, Shemuel HaNavi's grave. Now, why do I get so excited that I could see Shemuel HaNavi's grave? Now, there are people that like going to Kivret Tzadikim and visiting. I don't connect to that so much, and I'm not one of those people. So why am I so excited by this? It's his grave. Why do I shriek for joy and let everyone know, guys, look, you see that thing from far, the pointy thing? That's Shemuel HaNavi's grave. So that's one of the questions I want to answer today, why you get so excited by this. Along with the main question is, what role does Zikaron play in our present identities? And this, I think, is a really appropriate question to ask ourselves as we come into Rosh HaShana, which is Yom HaZikaron. Memory is key. So, and we are going to follow Shemuel HaNavi to do this. First of all, where is Nabi Shemuel or Kever Shemuel HaNavi? So I always like starting out with Jerusalem. And you drive 21 minutes northwest and you get there. Now, when I Google mapped it, I did it at a trafficy time. It took 21 minutes, but you could probably, if you go and there's no traffic, go even shorter. It's a pretty quick drive. I actually went there on a date once. One of my first dates ever went on in Israel years ago. The guy took me there. And I was like, oh, so we're going to a grave site, but it totally wasn't that. I mean, it was, but it has a lot more. It's really, really has gorgeous, gorgeous views, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So it was a cool place to go. And I was talking to a friend yesterday about it. And this friend said, oh, I also once went on a date there. So apparently it's a good dating place. Okay, so that's how you get there. This is what you're looking at, zoomed up. Now, I want to focus on this tall piece of the building. If you've been to Israel in the past and it was ever explained to you, or these you see all over the place, and at night they have green lights. What is this? So I mentioned in a previous Zoom that I gave what it is. I'm going to talk about it again. This is something called a minaret. a minaret is always connected to a mosque. You have the mosque structure and then the minaret. What is the function of it? What is it there for? So the Al-Aqsa Mosque, if you've ever been to the Kotel, you've seen the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This wall over here is the Kotel. This is the western wall, and this is the southern wall. And this is Al-Aqsa Mosque, and this over here is the minaret. You could see over here a speaker, and I'm going to zoom in on another one. This one is from Yafa. You see the speakers here. And the function of it is when the Muslims pray 5 times a day, the call to prayer is projected through that. And back in the day before they had speakers, they would go up there and pray. Now they have a microphone connected to the bottom and it connects to the speakers. So, Kever Shemuel HaNavi, we have a Muslim structure, a minaret. What else do we have? If we go inside, this is part of the building. And you see from the title, I wrote Architecture from a Crusader Church. Now, this is not original because we're going to talk in a second about the Crusaders. The Crusaders are a group of Christians that they came to Israel to free the Holy Land. And they built on this site, they built a church, which was destroyed in 1917 in World War I. And then the British rebuilt it, and they used a lot of original stones, and they tried to rebuild it, copying what it was before. They looked at pictures. And if anyone is familiar with architecture of churches, there's a certain standard that's used. And the way the ceiling is and the way the building is, this is part of the architecture. So far we said mosque, church, of course a shul. If you go to Shemuel HaNavi's grave and you walk down a few steps, the men on one side, the women on another, you will get to a shul. And this is what you have, the grave part. So the church part is not functioning, but there is a mosque that you don't, we saw the minaret from it. On another level, there is a mosque that is functioning where the Muslims come and pray. So we have a mosque, a shul, and a church all in one building, all which you could see from the road when you are driving and if you come there yourself and not just see it in passing. So what is all that doing there? So I want to take a step back and talk about where is Shemuel HaNavi buried. So if we open up Shemuel Aleph, it says, Shemuel met, v'yispedula ko Yisrael, v'yikberuhu barama uv'hira. So Shemuel died, and Bnei Israel all mourned for him, and he was buried in a place called Ramah. And the town, the beautiful town neighborhood that you see in back of you, this is called Ramot. And Ramot is named after Ramah because it's very close to Nabi Shemuel. So when they were building it and looking for a name, they said, well, if Shemuel is buried in the Ramah, and we're right next to Ramah, so let's call ourselves Ramot. Now, there are 3 criteria for identifying locations in Israel. How do we know if a place is really a place? So the first way is name preservation. If a lot of times the Arabs preserve a name, and that's how we know, and if it's similar sounding in Hebrew, that's an indication that it could be the original place. For example, there's an Arab neighborhood called Bet Jalla, and right next to that, we have the Jewish town of Gilah, because the names sound similar. So that's one way. It's not the only way, it's not enough, but that's one indication that a place is a place. Another one is archaeology. When we do digs, if we find remains that date back to the time period in question, things that make sense that they should be there, that's the second strength that it's probably the place. And the third one is if it makes sense geographically. Like, for example, to go back to archaeology, in Jerusalem, we found tons of things that are proving that let's say, Chizkiyahu HaMelech, we found a tunnel that he made, or we found one of his walls in the old city. And we find archaeology to prove what we believe. And the third is geographically it makes sense. If I am digging up north and I say, hey, I found Hebron, well, it doesn't make sense that Hebron would be in the north of the country, so I didn't find Hebron. So if you have all these 3 things, it's most likely that a place is a place. Now, what do we have here for Ramah? We read that Shemuel is buried in the Ramah. We do not have name preservation. We do not have archaeology. Now we have, I'm going to show you in a few slides, or maybe the next slide, the amount of archaeology of the site. They found remains of the first Beit HaMikdash, second Beit HaMikdash. So there's a ton of archaeology, but no archaeology that would help us, that say, oh, look, we found this. That means Shemuel was buried here. That means that this is the Ramah. And the third thing is it doesn't actually really make so much sense geographically. So we have none of these. Here is the picture that I mentioned a few seconds ago. If you have been to Shemuel HaNavi's grave within the last 5 years, you need to come back again, because this is all development of the last few years. So here is in the middle is the building, the structure that we were talking about. if you go, usually what Jews do that want to come to pray, so you come up this ramp over here, and then there's a door over here. You make a left, and then you get right into the shul. If you walk through here, the area that we said it was remodeled to be the architecture of a church, and then there's a locked door which leads to the mosque, and then there's these steps which leads to the roof. The roof has one of the most spectacular views in Yerushalayim. It's a little bit outside of Yerushalayim, but it's an amazing view. And I want you guys to look here. All these digs, all really, really recent, mostly from the time of the Hashmonaim. We have this huge moat that the Crusaders dug, so there's a ton of archaeology, but not so much that helps us. So we said we have all these things, church, mosque, shul, Ramah, but we don't have any of the proofs we need to prove that this is the Ramah. So we can say that it's a mistake. It's not really the Ramah. Where Shemuel was buried. And if it was a mistake, well, how this happened, and don't worry, but under the class, you'll be calm, you'll be happy. I'm not going to leave anyone up in arms. So how this come about? We have the Crusaders, which I mentioned, which came in the 1100s. They were Christians, and they were coming to free the Holy Land. And they see this mountaintop, and they say, hey, this mountaintop must be Shiloh. And they call it Shiloh. Now, there was an association with this area to Shemuel HaNavi from an earlier Muslim period. And the Crusaders, now they loved the Bible and they wanted to identify things. And they weren't so great at geography. And it didn't make sense that Shiloh would be there. But that's what they thought. They said, this is Shiloh. And then there was another place that they identified as Ramah. And they took bones from the Ramah. They brought them to Shiloh. They said, we know Shiloh was buried in Ramah. So we'll take the bones and bring them here and now bring them to Shiloh. And then later on, people said, this can't be Shiloh, but it's probably the Ramah, where it says in the Navi that Shemuel was buried in the Ramah. And that's what stood for a really long time. The tradition associating this place with Shemuel HaNavi is very strong. Whatever this place is, there is a strong association, whether or not he's buried there. However, many people don't think that the place is the Ramah for the reasons that we mentioned, that it doesn't meet any of the checks and it just doesn't make sense. So what is it? And now we're coming to the part why I get so excited when I see Shemuel HaNavi's grave. You know what? I'm fixing myself. I'm not calling Shemuel HaNavi's grave because it's just that it's not, but it's so ingrained in Israeli consciousness. And also if you type it into Google, even the place now that they did a lot of digs and it really progressed, they came out with a brochure. Shemuel HaNavi's grave, like it's written all over. So it is something that people say, and I'm not going to ever say 100%. We never know 100%, but it's most likely not. So what is it, which makes me excited? It is most likely known as a place called mitzvah. And mitzvah comes from the word sofet, to look out. And it's really, really high. It's about 860 meters, which is like 3,000 feet, if that means anything to you. If not, then come to Israel and go on top and see it. So those numbers will mean something. And we are looking out. So this is a picture taken from the roof, not by me. I found it on the internet. And you see some of the archaeology, and you're looking out. You could look in every direction. I remember when I was in seminary 12 years ago, I came with my tour guide, Hillel Brenner, if anyone ever used him, amazing tour guide, to this place, and we went to the roof. And I remember him saying specifically, and it's crazy how many years back this is going. He goes, guys, look, you could see on one side, you could see Hebron, on the other side, you could see Shechem. When Yaakov sent his brother, when Yaakov sent Yosef to go see his brothers, you could see the distance that he had to walk. And I was like, wow, what an incredible thing to do. And when you come on top to Navi Shemuel, you could see how far everything is. So this is the mitzvah. Now, why is the mitzvah super exciting? Because if we open up Sefer Shemuel, it says that the mitzvah was a place of prayer. Shemuel, and he said that he was going to pray for them. And he gathered them all, and they fasted. And they're doing teshuvah. They said, Chatanu l'Adonai, and he's judging them. And they tell Shemuel, scream out to God, let him save us from the Pelishtim. The Pelishtim was the major threat of the time. And the Pasuk tells us, Vayiz'ak Shemuel el Adonai ba'ad Yisrael, Vayanehu Adonai. That Shemuel screamed out to God, and God answered him. So here we are at a place that is a place of tefillah, in which Shemuel calls out to God and God answers him. Now, put that on the side for a minute. I want to go to Yaakov. When Yaakov is leaving Beersheba, he goes to head to Haran. It says, "Vayifka b'makom vayal sham ki b'hashemesh," and he has a dream with the angels going up and down the ladder. Now, I want to quote for you a Gemara. The Gemara says, "Vayitze Yaakov miBeersheva v'yelech וכתיב ויפגע במקום, כי מטה לחרן, אמר, אפשר עברתי המקום שהתפללו אבותיי ואני לא התפללתי? So according to the Chachamim, when it says ויפגע במקום, it means that he prayed, and the Chachamim say that he made tefillat avit, and what they kind of get inside his head, and they say, Yaakov said, is it possible that I passed by a place where my fathers prayed and I didn't pray there? How could that be? So if I'm taking that same logic, is it possible that we're passing the mitzvah that has a stronger association with Shemuel HaNavi being a place of prayer, and we're not going to pray there? And there is someone that took full advantage of that and said, hey, this place is associated with Shemuel HaNavi and has this tradition. I'm going to sit and pray there. And who is that person that did that? Yehuda HaMaccabi. In Sefer HaMaccabim, so a little bit of background on Yehuda HaMaccabi. So he fought 8 battles altogether, which took about 6 years. And after he died, his brothers continued the battles. The Chashmonim battles altogether lasted about 30 years. Now, Sefer HaMaccabim was originally written in Greek, and it was translated into Hebrew. And then it was fixed. The Hebrew was fixed into very accessible Hebrew by one of the people that did it. His name is Dr. Chagi Ben Artzi, and he wrote this book called Megillat Chanukah, which I always read before Chanukah. It's very short. It's more like a booklet. And this section was taken from there. So right before his 3rd battle, it says that Yehuda gathered the people to the mitzvah. Sham mitpadelu. They prayed over there. Oh, and also this line. What's the mitzvah? Sham nahagu Yehudim mitpalel ma'az yamav shel Shemuel. There was a custom to pray there from the days of Shemuel HaNavi. So the people are in the mitzvah. They're getting ready to fight against the Greeks. They're reading from the Torah. They're blowing the trumpets. They're fasting. And what does Yehuda do? So I always get so pleasantly surprised when I read this, because when I think of Yehuda Maccabi, I think of a warrior. I don't really think of him, not that, I mean, of course he followed God in the Torah and the mitzvah, because that's the whole thing with Matityahu, that he gathers all the people. But I guess because I think of him as a warrior, I think less of the religious aspect. And here we read in Sefer HaMaccabim that one of the things Yehuda does is he shichred, is according to the Torah, if someone builds a new house or gets engaged to a wife and didn't get to marry her yet, or planted a vineyard, or someone who's afraid, they don't have to participate in the war. So he sends all these people. And then what does he do with the people that left? He's the people that are left that to fight. He's encouraging them, and he tells them, "Tov motenu b'milchama merot beraat amenu miktashenu." It's better that we die in the war than we see the evil that's going to befall our nation and the mikdash. And for any of the soldiers of Yehuda Maccabi that are in the mitzvah with him and have a sense of history, them being there and praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to save them from the Yevanim is much more than just, oh, we need to pray, let's pray over here. If they have this sense of history and the Zikaron and the memory, they're able to connect back to Shemuel HaNavi, to his tefillah that he did against the Pelishtim. And then hearing Yehuda Maccabi's speech and the inspiration that he's infusing in them, it becomes that much more great. So that's something I want to keep you in mind. Yehuda Maccabi took advantage of that. Now, I want to go back a little bit in time. And if you are standing on Nabi Shemuel, one of these views you will see really close by is this Arab town called El Jib. Now, El Jib, we identify as the biblical town of Giv'on. And we see the similarity in the name, El Jib and Giv'on, and it makes sense geographically, and we found archaeology to prove it. And what does this connect to? So Giv'on, if I jog your memory, I'm going to bring you to Sefer Yehoshua. Yehoshua is about to fight against the Amei Canaan, and what happened is the Givonim, they dressed up and they tricked Yehoshua, and he made peace with them. He didn't know who they were, he didn't ask God. And then the Givonim get attacked, and they say, Yehoshua, come help us, and he has to help them. And Hashem tells Yehoshua, Al tira mehem, don't be afraid of them. Ki biyadecha netatim, lo yamod ish mehem befanecha. Don't worry, I'm going to help you. No one will stand in the way. And then it says, לפני ישראל, ויקם מכה גדולה בגבעון, וירדפם דרך מעלה חרון, ויקם עד הזקה ועד מקדה. And now they're having this huge battle about Giv'on, and they're successful. And then we have the very famous line further down, Shemesh begiv'on dom. It's cool because we could see the place, so it connects to the Besukim. Now, if you notice the background that I picked, we see a beautiful blue sky with the sun shining. Now, I did this on purpose. Why? Because one of the amazing things about, among the millions of living in Israel, is when you go to an actual place where something happened, the Pesukim and the Tanach make more sense to you. And I want to show you the route that Yoshua took. So if it says that Kol halayla ala min ha-Gilgal, he's coming up from the Gilgal. The Gilgal is, it didn't have it on Google Maps, but it's identified about in this area near Yericho. The Yarden is over here. And the whole night he's doing this crazy midnight walk with all his troops to the area of Givon, which is Al-Jib on the map over here. Now, if you look at the directions, he's coming from the east and they're at the west. Now, when they're looking at him and all the troops, the sun rises in the east. So the sun is shining in their eyes. And one of the reasons, other than God helping Yoshua, that practically why they're able to be so victorious is because as they're fighting, the enemies are completely blinded by the rising sun. And when I was at that place and I had a tour guide that told me that, she goes, and look how perfect, because right now when we look, we're getting blinded by the sun, so we can experience it. And also they say about Yehuda HaMaccabi that a similar thing happened. They use this trick of the sun. If you get the sun in the enemy's eyes, it's this, I'm going to say little tactic, but it's a huge thing. It has a huge effect. So that's something really nice you could experience if you go there. So we could go even further back from Shemuel HaNavi. We could connect to Yoshua, which happened in the same area. Now, I want to just summarize what we have so far. We're not done. Wait, 1 second. Okay. So we opened up, we spoke about the beauty of Israel and how when I am driving along, I always like looking out the window and seeing all these beautiful places. And because I don't have a car, I always get to, I really wish I had a car, don't get me wrong. I always buy one if I want one, but I get to experience the beauty because I get to look out. We spoke about the location of Nabi Shemuel, how it's northwest of Yerushalayim, takes about 20 minutes to get there. We spoke about the structure, how we have a mosque. Shemuel HaNavi is also holy to the Muslims, and he's written about in the Quran. We have a church because the Christians follow the Bible, and Shemuel HaNavi is mentioned, so they built that in commemoration, and we have a shul. We spoke of the misidentification as Ramah, which we said is really the mitzvah. We spoke about what the word mitzvah means, how it's really high up, and you could get a great view. Also, strategically, it's a great place for a battle because you have the advantage, you could see everyone. We spoke about Shemuel HaNavi's tefillah, that he's pouring his heart out to God, saying, God, listen to us, and it says that God answered him. We mentioned Yehuda HaMaccabi and a battle that took place right nearby in Giv'on. That was in Yoshua. We spoke about Yehuda HaMaccabi right before his third battle, that he encourages the people, and they specifically went to the mitzvah to pray because they knew that there was a tradition associated with. Now, that's so far what we spoke about today. Now, what does all of this have to do with Rosh HaShana, and what does all of this have to do with Zikaron? So here are cars on Highway 1. Now, I want to imagine what the different people in the cars are doing. So let's say this car over here, the driver is listening to the news. This car over here, the driver is listening to music. Maybe in the cab, maybe there's two people and they're talking to each other, not really paying attention to what's going on. And it could be that over here, the driver is taking a glance to his right, or maybe I'm a passenger in this car and this is what I'm saying, hey, look all the way on top of the mountain, you could see Nabi Shemuel. And when I'll say about myself because it's easier. And then when I'm looking out at it, I say, hey, this is a place where Shemuel and Navi prayed to God. This is the place where Yehuda HaMaccabi after him prayed to God. Or with Yoshua took place. This is a site where Bnei Israel did teshuvah. This is where they wanted HaKadosh Baruch Hu to answer them. Wow, connecting to all of this, what an opportunity I have right now as I'm driving in the car in traffic, that I could sit and what do I want? I could pour my heart out to God and connect to God also, and I could connect to all the tefillot that came before me. Now, all of this I can only do if I have the Zikaron, if I have the memory of what came before. And it's work, because you're not just born with it, and it's something you need to work at to get. And I really think, and I'm very grateful to the SCA for putting together all of these classes, because I think something that all of the rabbis and women and teachers, what we try to give over is to give you Zikaron and give you knowledge of history and Tanach, because that's the foundation at the end of the day. That is what's giving us our Zikaron. Now, the crash course is to come live in Israel. And I hope and I pray that you all could come to live in Israel. And if not live, then at least come visit many, many times, because it happens every second. You're coming and you're just looking out and you have all this Zikaron coming back at you. And this is only one example from something you see on the highway and passing. What about the next thing you see? And the country is just alive in it. So that's really the quick way to get it. And that, I think that's what we're really supposed to do every day of our lives, because yes, Rosh HaShana is Yom HaZikaron, but we're supposed to be living with this awareness of who are we, where we come from, what's our identity, what builds our identity, and ask ourselves, what place do we want in Am Yisrael? How do we want to continue this? And that's something that we need to do every day, because it's not enough to just do once a day. And when I look at Nabi Shemuel, I really get all that inspiration, because I know all of the things that happen there and the association with Shemuel HaNavi. And what I want to do is I want to end with a pasuk in Tehillim. It says, Moshe ve'Aaron bechohana, u'Shmuel ve'korei shemo, koreim el Adonai v'hu ya'anem. Shemuel HaNavi calls out to God, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu answers him. And I pray for all of us that on Rosh Hashanah, when we stand in front of God in Zikaron, his Zikaron, our Zikaron, that the same way that he answered Shemuel HaNavi, and he answers Moshe and Aaron, that he should answer us in honor of all of the learning that we're doing. And I wish you a meaningful day of Zikaron and a Shana Tova. And the SCA, they're starting a fundraising campaign. If you enjoyed this class and enjoyed all the program that they do, I know I love it, so please consider donating. Thank you for coming, and I really wish you a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, Adele.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, Adele. Happy
Bye.
holidays.
Thank you, Mabruk.
Bye.
Hag Sameach.
Hag Sameach.